Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 444. I am your host, Michael, joining me this evening. Uh, Gail from nyfights.com, Daniel from 4 Boxing News and the Inscriber. Uh, what's going on, lady and gent? Sorry.
We
I'm
are
laughing for a reason.
we are tired for a good cause. So we have a lot to go through, but we're not going to waste time. It's going to be a tidy show.
Right. Reason I'm laughing is that when you do this boxing thing, particularly if you write, go to fights and whatnot, um, sometimes you could get fatigued. And given what transpired this weekend and what transpired earlier today in Japan, let's just say a lot of folks out here in this boxing world, yours company, present company included, are less than 100% and just surviving on lacking sleep. Let's just say that, and right. So those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report. Uh, I'm hearing some echo. So everybody, put yourself on mute, please. Thank you. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report, live YouTube show, podcast, blog, site, etc. Talking all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we'll talk about it, and when it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get discussed. If you want to find out all information about Pound for Pound Boxing Report, please go to the site, p4pboxingreport.com. If you wish to email us, you can do so, p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you'll find where to find Pound for Pound Box Report all over the socials, links to the YouTube channel, links to the Facebook, Tumblr, Facebook, Twitter, IG page, also links to where to find us all over the podcast realm, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, be it Spotify, be it Anchor, be it Apple Podcast. You should be able to find Pound for Pound Boxer Report. If you wish to donate, got a Cash Me and PayPal donation link. Let donation be the best nation. Wouldn't matter to us if it's $1, $2, $5. We'll be grateful for anything that you would like to contribute. Um, Last but certainly not least, for the fitness enthusiasts out there, I got a link to Body, BODI, formerly known as Beachbody On Demand. If you're looking to get your body right for the summer, Body has programs for any and all suitable goals and interests. If you're looking to get your weightlifting on, programs like Lift 4, Lift More. If you're looking for hardcore CrossFit style workouts, programs like Morning Meltdown, uh, 645, 6 weeks to the work, chop wood, carry water, etc. Even have dance programs for those who like to dance to get their fitness while dancing. If you're looking for a boxing specific program, please check out 10 Rounds. That is a 6 week program consisting of 3 days of boxing based cardio, 2 days of weightlifting. The P90X series still go hard, still effective. So are the Insanity and the Insanity Asylum series. At the very least, take advantage of the free 14-day trial, which runs throughout the year, and that is for 2 weeks. For 14 days, you will get free access to any and all programs on Body, including the sneak peek into Dig Deeper, which is a program that's going to drop later on this year. Let's get things going. We were out last week, but so this week is going to be mainly recaps, right? Let's talk about what transpired earlier today in Tokyo in front of a sold out 50,000 fans over at the Tokyo Dome in Tokyo. Gail, the return of the monster, Naoya Inoue, uh, put the titles on the line. He's undisputed junior featherweight champion against former two-division champion Luis Nery. And to the surprise of just about the entire boxing world, a minute into the first round, Inoue was on the deck, courtesy of a counter Luis Nery left hook. But if looks could kill, Gil, when you saw Inoue's eyes when he was on the floor and as he was getting up, uh, the beast was brought out, and he proceeded to get up, dust himself off, and punish Pantera Nery for the rest of the fight. Toyed with him, played with him throughout at times. Uh, put him down 3 times, finished him off in the 6th round. Beautiful combination, left hook, right uppercut, then quickly followed with a right hand. The Monster Nery retains his undisputed status at 122. A lot of talk afterwards about Inoue and Crawford in the pound for pound race, quote unquote. A lot of talk, a lot of backlash. At least I've seen in my feed on social media about, oh, in a way he got exposed. I've even had some folks dare say that in a way is not even pound for pound. Thoughts on the fight and thoughts on the conversation that's been had in the aftermath of this win, Gail, and you can follow up, Daniel.
Well, certainly for just a few seconds there at the beginning of the fight, we were all saying some version of "Holy shit!" as Inoue sat down hard, courtesy of that Nery hook. And I had to think, wow, is Buster Douglas smiling down on this fight? But no, it did wake up Inoue, and that is not uncommon, where a fighter gets popped early, it rattles his cage, wakes him up, wakes up the beast, pokes the bear, and Inoue settled down, got to work, and then we watched an absolute thing of beauty transpire for the next 5+ rounds until Inoue ended the fight. He is simply so beautiful to watch in the ring, the craft that is on display. Never mind the outcome, the performance, the excitement that he generates, those moments of showboating that happen when he's really in control of a fight, which we got more than a few of those, which are wildly entertaining. That's a part of what boxing is all about that no other sport really offers. Nery gave a good effort, no shame in his game. He was up against one of the best. But it is hard to disarm Naoya in a way of all his tools. His ring generalship, his footwork is phenomenal. The angles, the ability to feint and provide defensive miscues to his opponent. And then all of that in service of the fact that he has God-given power. You'll hear a lot of boxing trainers, boxing experts talk about, can you develop a fighter into a power puncher? Is power learned, developed, or is it given? Is it simply you've got it or you don't? I lean toward the side of many people who say that you really either have it or you don't. You can absolutely improve your punching performance, but to be a phenomenal power puncher like a Naoya Inoue, all the way up to a Deontay Wilder, you've got it. And Inoue has got it. And part of what makes his power so just dazzling to watch is he doesn't have to load up. He doesn't have to. He has got a lot of his best knockout punches are very short hooks, or either to the head or to the body, because his technique is so sound. His accuracy, his footwork. Great power punchers punch up from the feet. The punch doesn't come just from the arm or the shoulder girdle. It is the entire weight of the body up from planting the feet and firing. And if you can plant your feet quickly, you don't need a lot of trajectory. So a lot of these punches come from nowhere. They're incredibly quick. That's what forces an opponent to be surprised, as they don't know where it's going to come from. And that's exactly what happened to Luis Nery, especially with the final knockout punch. It was a 3-punch combination ending with the right hook, and he crumpled like a balled up piece of paper. He was done. Referee Michael Griffin knew he was done, didn't count him out. That was it. Phenomenal performance. We can get into the aftermath, the discussion, the pound for pound, the future. But let's just sit here for a moment and enjoy what we got to see. Somebody at the absolute top of their sport in front of his countrymen, a sold out crowd, only the third boxing event ever at the Tokyo Dome, which is a massive baseball stadium that seats 55,000, sold out. Fans in their seat for the first undercard fight. Everyone who knows me knows I believe you need to be in your seat when those 4 and 6 rounders take place. But I'll get off my soapbox for that. You can talk to me about it on social later. And just we need a moment before we completely launch into all of the discussion and picking apart these things and where he stands and everybody's opinion to that was a phenomenal athletic performance. Regardless of what you think about all these other things, we need to appreciate it and enjoy it, especially those of us that got up at 1 or 2 in the morning, watched the whole darn card, and even those of you that got up on the East Coast of the United States and had your boxing and coffee. Absolutely thrilled and kind of part of the fun to get up early. Hey, we started our week with boxing on a Monday morning. How good is that?
I think what Gail is speaking to, and I want to give a shout out to those who are in the chat right now. Shout out to Beagle. Shout out to Compliance. Um, we're responding to your question, comment, Beagle. In terms of the pound for pound discussion, we'll get into that in a bit. Compliant chimed in. He said he has, in a way, number 2 pound for pound. I think what Gail is trying to say is give folks their flowers while they're here to smell the roses, right? Whatever you think about, in a way, applaud him for who he is as a fighter. Not just for who he is as a fighter, but for the event in himself. Last episode, we went into a deep dive in response to Sean Porter's comments about how his argument that for Inoue to be considered the elite, the man, the best of the best. Oh, he has to do certain things, including fighting in the United States. This event, this fight showed how, in my opinion, off base, off the mark, Porter was. Name me an American fighter. I don't care what division that they're in. That can draw that kind of crowd, that can draw that kind of event, right? And you can tell how it was because Japanese fans are normally quiet, Gail and Daniel, but yet when Nery's name was announced during the introductions, they booed, and you heard them boo, right? And they
Well,
were
there's a little
booing.
history there, let's face
I
it.
mean, but still, the fact that they were so animated and they were so emotionally invested, just a great event that you really have to appreciate. I go to you, Daniel. Your thoughts on what we all witnessed this morning.
All right. First of all, like if you got up early, like I did, to watch this, kudos to you on the Monday morning. Particularly like say Gail had,
Listen, we're all running on little to no sleep right now.
yeah, like the let's just say, folks, since Friday night, whether it has been in the ring of boxing or in the ring of hip hop, we have not slept. I personally have not slept much because of food poisoning, but luckily I'm better. and and I was able to get up in the morning. I just gotta ask a question because I know there's probably, hopefully, we can have a Japanese audience listening to this later on, or if they catch it a little bit live. Because I'm gonna ask a general question because I noticed just how visceral that booing was for Nery. And yes, there's history there with how dirty Nery did Yamanaka twice. How was anyway knocking Nery out the way he did? Was it as satisfying as watching Sakuchi Sakuraba destroy the Gracie family one by one in the late 90s? in the early 2000s with Pride. Was it that satisfying? Because I gotta ask that question. Because first, yeah, it was scary. The first round, if you were an Inoue fan, you were probably scared because that was the one flaw. If there's a flaw that you can always detect with Naoya Inoue, it's his defense. Oh, and Gail, it's MMA. Basically, it's Pride FC. I forgot to mention. Yeah, it's MMA. Takuchi Sakuraba's one of the most, probably the first Japanese MMA star.
Quick backstory. When it comes to MMA and UFC, particularly in the 90s, the Gracie family was considered the people, right? No one better, no one better, until they went over to Japan and fought Sukiyara, and he just basically destroyed the entire family, active family, one by one by one. Stunning what he did to him. But proceed on, Daniel.
Yeah, but the main reason I ask is because it also proves a certain point. In all those events, all those Pride events, all those events where Sakuraba was, literally living up to his moniker of the Gracie Hunter. You saw those crowds be completely sold out. And it wasn't even at the time, I think they had, when he fought Mirko Krokop, they had 90,000 people in the stadium. And it was in Tokyo. That's how passionate the boxing and MMA fan base is in Japan for their fellow countrymen. And you saw Inoue feed off that after that first knockdown. Because like I was about to say, like if there's any flaw that you can pinpoint to when it comes to Inoue, is he leaves himself open at times for a left hook when he tries to set up his offense. And it wasn't a looping shot. It wasn't a Hail Mary. Nery caught him with a text foot short left hook. And you know it took him for a loop. Just look at the way his Inoue's left foot pivoted. And that knockdown. It wasn't a slip up. It pivoted the way you would pivot a basketball player would pivot. But he was able to get up. He fed off the crowd and then showed he had superior hand speed. He had superior footwork. And he did have superior power overall. And nothing explains it better just in the way the fight ended, because it wasn't a straight shot. It wasn't a hook. It wasn't an uppercut. It was a little short shot right after he threw the first right hand that caught Nery. A second short right hand because he saw the opening. And that's what took Nery out. That is textbook next level skill, power in this weight class. And it's a theme that you're going to see when it came to the challengers and the main events of this fight. The phrase sometimes, your arms are too short to box with God. I commend Nery for trying. Like, he wasn't intimidated. He came forward. He had his own power. He showed his own power. But he wasn't at the level of Nano anyway. And it showed, and it was proven. And look at that crowd in the Tokyo Dome. They were there from the beginning of the fight. Gail will probably talk about the crowd, how the crowd disseminated in the next big fight we're going to talk about. But that crowd, there were other fights with other Japanese fighters, but that crowd was seated and ready to go, sold out capacity from the very first fight. That is 1,000%. What American, that's what American fight. That's what we should strive for. Because I agree to a certain extent. Like, if you pay tickets to see an event, go for the entire event. I understand. Yeah, you got to go into You want to go when the main event goes in, but by then, what are you doing? You're fighting wherever you're going. You're fighting traffic. You're fighting public transportation. If you want to fight to get in the seat, no, go in early. Show your support, because there's a reason that Inoue doesn't have to go to the U.S., despite what some American pundits or fans want to think. He doesn't have to when those type of crowds come for him.
Right, 1,000%. When you can draw that size of a crowd and you making 8 figures per fight, um, yeah, I have no more to add. A couple of comments here, and one I want to respond to some comments, and one I want to respond to specifically. We go down the Rolodex. I love the folks, the activity in the live chat. Um, Lobster 11 says, my thoughts. I'm a fan of both Crawford and Inoue, but Inoue simply has been more active, unified more divisions, and defeated his titles more. So for me, it's Inoue 1, Crawford 2. He says, what I find really a shame is that Crawford isn't as popular in the U.S. as Inoue is in Japan. The U.S. boxing scene really did Crawford dirty. He should be idolized for what he has accomplished. I agree with that 100%. Um, some more comments. Read right here. He said, even then, you got a whole section of the fan base still trying to crap on Bud, but you know who I'm talking about. Says that Bud is a generational talent. Again, some more comments, and Ivan says that the one thing I criticized about Inoue was jumping so fast from 115 when it was packed with guys like Chocolatito, Sursikat, Sorong Vasai, and Quadras. Those would have been awesome matchups. Let me give some backstory on this because I wrote about this for Three Kings Boxing. Please check out Three Kings Boxing, your source for pure unadulterated boxing information. Shout out to the entire Three Kings Boxing staff and crew, 2K, the man behind Three Kings, Bo, head of media relations and senior writer, who you've heard on this show numerous times. I'm a senior writer. Shout out to Bakari, fellow senior writer, and shout out to all the contributors behind the scenes. And Red, who does all of the editing and a lot of the work on the site. I wrote about this when it comes to this complaint of this criticism, right? In a way, and a lot of people don't know about this, but Inoue came to America back, what was it, 2016, Gail? For the Superfly series?
Yep, he appeared on HBO Boxing in his American debut.
Right.
Of 9,500 people at what was then called the StubHub Center in Carson, California.
And he did it. Go ahead.
He was on an undercard to Juan Francisco Estrada, who was kind of making a interim type defense, just a stay busy fight for him. He fought a Ohio-based fighter, super flyweight, named Antonio Nieves, who held his own very briefly and absolutely got drilled by Inoue. Everyone ringside in the media section, we just looked at each other to see that up close, to see him perform that way. 8 years ago, folks. And he's been a juggernaut ever since then. Now, I see, Ivan, your comment. The problem is back then, a unknown Japanese fighter, age 22 or 3, he was not considered a viable opponent, not necessarily due to skill, but he was unestablished, he was unknown, he was not a draw, and the risk versus reward for someone who can punch like that, nobody among the superflies at the top, which you just named, Estrada, Chocolatito, Sorong, Vasai, and Quadras, the superflies version of the Four Kings, they were still fighting each other. They didn't need to fold Inoue in just yet. And by the time Inoue got to that level where he would have been a draw, um, first of all, we also had the problem of the pandemic intervening, and Inoue did fight a fight in Las Vegas, but during the pandemic, so that was an issue. So it's less that they ducked him, if that's what you're trying to say. The timing was just poor, given the levels, the age range, and the promoters and networks who were involved at the time. This was also pre-streaming, everybody. All we had were HBO Boxing and Showtime. So
Even
different era, fast forward, nearly 10 years, and it would have been, I think, a very different story.
even more to the point, particularly when it comes to um, Inoue and Chocolatito. And I'm gonna put the comment here. Here's the thing that people either don't know or refuse to consider. Uh, Earlier, at the beginning of 2016, Inoue's camp made an official offer to fight Chocolatito. Chocolatito turned it down. Why? Because at the time he felt he could get more money in a rematch with Carlos Quadras here in the States on HBO than he could fighting Inoue in Japan. So it wasn't that Inoue wasn't trying to seek these fights. Timing means everything. And when there was offers on the table, some of these guys turned them down. Now, Sri Sakat, short shelf life. Um, Quadras, I don't know if Quadras really wanted to tangle with the likes of it anyway. But in terms of Roman, there was an offer on the table. Inoue was interested. Inoue was always interested. Do homework assignment. Go search the Japanese broadcast of Inoue's first title defense when he won the world title at 108 pounds. Right? He. Hold on for a second. Excuse me. Um, when it comes to Inoue, do a homework assignment. Go search the Japanese broadcast of his first title defense at 108 pounds. It's in Japanese, but there was video and imagery of Roman during interviews with Inoue. So that tells me right there, there's always been an interest for Inoue to fight Chocolatito. It just didn't happen. It just didn't happen. And it wasn't necessarily because of Inoue, right? So I'm just putting out there for the record that was on the table. Inoue has always wanted to fight Chocolatito. And when it came to the official offer, as much as we all love and respect Chocolatito, turned it down. He said no because he felt there were more financial options for him there. And of course, he turned it down. He ended up fighting Srisakat twice, lost to him twice. So it's a fight that we never saw and we will never will see. So that's just I just want to put that on there out there for the record for those not a diss to you, Ivan, but to those uninformed who continue to insist that Inoue has been ducking Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, and that's just not the case. Couple of things I want to discuss more when it comes to the Japanese card, right? Because we're not going to talk about it all. Um, on the undercard, you had two bantamweight title fights, right? Um, Inoue's brother Takuma successfully defended the WBA belt, while a Japanese fighter defeated Jason Maloney to win the WBO belt. I'll go to you, Daniel. Um, we now have a scenario where all four major world titles at 118 are held by Japanese fighters. Your thoughts on that? And to me, I kind of connected to what we discussed about last week. The reason I was so upset at Porter's comments because he seemed ignorant about the fact that when it comes to the lower weight divisions, the money and the talent is not in the United States. It's overseas. It's overseas. It's in Mexico. It's in Asia, specifically places like Japan and Thailand. Your thoughts on it? On looks like where Inoue left off, becoming undisputed at 118 pounds. His countryman has picked up the mantle and are running the roost right now in the bantamweight division.
It's a textbook example. It's a textbook example we were talking about last week. When it comes, because this country, particularly the United States, we are obsessed with certain weight divisions, the glamour divisions. Unfortunately, the lower weight class, I think up to featherweight. Featherweight's like, to me, that borderline is unfortunately often ignored. And yes, we've had, in recent history, the U.S. has had fighters in those lower weight classes that have hopefully down the line moved some American kids of those weight classes to try. Michael Carvajal, Brian Valoria. We've had as Americans a couple of fighters that can do that, but the base of power is over there. And if for a weight class that Americans want to pay attention to, this is a little bit similar now. Now, granted, yeah, it didn't equate to the various ones having world titles at the same time, but it's similar to how the British handled their heavyweight scene. The British have a pretty deep bench when it comes to the domestic scene and European scene that can see talent go into the world title picture. And that's something that gets ignored for a lot of people that don't only pay attention to people who hold the belts. It's the same thing in this weight class. Japan and Latin America has been stopped up, but Japan has been doing a lot more of it lately, where you've seen these great crop fighters coming in and be ready to go, and they just so happen now to be all in the same weight classes or moving up at the same rate. So it should not surprise anybody that has been paying attention that now the bantamweight division is completely controlled by one country. And again, it shouldn't surprise anyone that it's that, because they have the financial backing and the fan support to do this. It's not a situation where, okay, yeah, 4 Japanese fighters, but they have to go somewhere else to make money. No. They can stay home. They just have to pick a different Japanese city to go to. They can go to Osaka or Yokohama or Hokkaido. Or if you really want to go extreme, you can even go to Okinawa. They don't have to cater to Western markets. They don't have to cater to particularly American markets. But it shows that the level of support that is there can feed this type of environment. And which is, again, it should show, hey, us, Americanos, gring, whether you're black, white, speak English, speak Spanish, whatever, you live in the US and you're a boxing fan, and even if you're just a casual, try to pay attention a little bit more, because you're seeing other countries show the support that they're showing fighters from the beginning of the ground floor. And you're seeing the results in that area. We're not seeing the same support in the US, where we would have, let's say, the middleweight division completely, or super middleweight completely dominated by Americans, or cruiserweights completely dominated by Americans, even though we have a lot of guys that maybe would benefit from it. But it's because it's a cruiserweight division, it doesn't make as much money as heavyweight. It gets ignored. But then you have other areas where we'll be able to dominate, and they wind up making more money. So this is, like I said, this is a good thing. Congratulations to all 4 fighters. Now, let's see who can take the belts from one of them, because that's going to be the fun adventure.
Indeed. I see the scenario in 118. I'm thinking eventual unification between the 4 champions. At least that's what I hope. And again, this is the testament to the strength of Japanese boxing right now. It's at fever pitch at all time. I ain't gonna say all time, but it's the strongest I've ever seen it in my years of covering the sport. So let's move from Tokyo to uh, Las Vegas and the return of Canelo fighting Jaime Munguia. Gail got off to a slow start, bit of a slow start, Canelo Alvarez, but when he put Munguia down in the 4th round, you can just see him start to relax. You can see him start to warm up. Pretty much had his way with Munguia, who fought hard, tried throughout, but there's levels to this, and Canelo Alvarez is clearly the superior fighter, and he showed it Saturday night.
Oh, that to me or Gail? Sorry.
That's to Gail.
I'm good. Yeah, he did. The fight really proceeded almost exactly as everyone had predicted. Now, bear in mind, we had just gone through the upset by Ryan Garcia of Devin Haney. So those of us in the prediction game are feeling a little rattled about making our predictions. But nevertheless, most of the predictions about this fight going into the later rounds at minimum, to the distance at best, likely were right on target. Where everyone hedges is knowing how much mileage Canelo has on him. You know, he is really from that era of Mexican fighters who end up with careers of 70, 80, 90 fights. This was his 65th, 6'5" fight at age 33, because he started boxing as a pro at age 15. You know, you start rattling off all those 4-rounders, 6-rounders. That is a lot of tread on the tires. So you ask yourself, is this the fight where we see Canelo's age? Is this the fight where we see him diminished? It wasn't. It absolutely wasn't. He was facing a younger, stronger, and on Saturday night, much bigger man in the ring. The eye test of seeing them, not with a screen in between my eyes and them, against each other, Munguia is the far bigger man. But Canelo has fought many larger fighters. He's fought nominally at least 2 light heavyweights, if you include Bivol. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The skill level matters. And while Canelo isn't at the absolute peak of his skills, he is at the peak of his experience. And that's where he is so dangerous and why he still is always the odds-on favorite. No matter how active Munguia is, no matter what he throws at Canelo, Canelo's experience is going to, for the most part, keep him out of trouble. And he is still a smart fighter. He is economical with his punches. He knows not to punch himself out. He cannot be a volume puncher. And he has always been at his best as a counterpuncher, a classic Mexican counterpuncher. So if you've got someone coming at you, like a Jaime Munguia, with youth, with size, with lots of activity, Canelo is right in the sweet spot. His defense is greatly improved over the years. It's not his number one weapon, but it's mighty effective. He slipped a lot of the punches coming at him from Munguia. Munguia's connect rate was half of what Canelo's connect rate was for power punching. And Canelo is so economical. He throws only when he knows there's a high percentage of that punch landing. He doesn't throw just to keep his hands in someone's face or on their body. And he landed 50% of all the power punches thrown. That is a phenomenal connect percentage. And you only get there by experience that is hard won and hours in the gym. And that's what we saw, was the culmination of all that experience, all those hard fights he's had, all the wars with Golovkin served him really well against Munguia. Now, credit to Munguia. He was not afraid. He did not seem intimidated. He did extremely well the first 2 to 3 rounds. I gave him rounds 1 and 3. There were people on Media Row that also gave him round 2. I think that was a little tougher to justify. But when Canelo caught him with a picture-perfect counter uppercut and dropped him, the entire tone of the fight changed. Munguia's fight plan fell into disarray. He seemed increasingly desperate, and it was an uphill climb for Munguia, not just to get off the deck, but get back to where he was and how he was delivering his game plan in those first few rounds. Could Canelo have finished Munguia off? Yes. But Ivan, I think your comment is right on target. He was treating Munguia almost as a mentor to a student in a lot of ways. And he did that during the fight week and fight lead up very much. I think he would like to pass his title, his position, if you will, as Mexico's greatest current fighter to someone like Munguia. I think he has enormous respect for him. And in the same way that his loss to Floyd Mayweather did not, in the long run, damage his career, far from it, he took the learning experience and he benefited from it. And I think in that same way, he sees himself in the Mayweather role, dishing out the lessons to Munguia, who can take them, learn from them, and move forward. And I think he'll feel some sense of pride when his career is over, seeing Munguia step up and take his place.
That being said, Daniel, the future of Canelo, I can't push back against anything Gail just said, but in terms of what's next for Canelo, listen, David Benavidez was there, letting everybody know, and anybody within shouting distance knows that he wants to fight him. They interviewed him during the broadcast, and Canelo was saying, "Oh, if the money's right, I'll fight him for free." But in the 2 days following this fight, we're hearing Edgar Berlanga in September. Seriously, really?
Yeah, well, this is the stage we're in. Like Gail mentioned, Canelo learned from Floyd in more ways than one. And Canelo is at the stage of his career and still at the stage in boxing where he can even tell the blood money mark who he's willing to fight and be taken seriously. Now, he's also at a stage of his career where he's not worried about losses. He already has those in his record. It's about trying to probably leave the ring as much of it intact as you can, and that unfortunately does mean picking safe opponents. And Berlanga right now, it's literally just putting a T-ball. It's an equivalent to putting a T-ball in front of prime pre-steroid Barry Bonds. Just a complete layup. Will you be mad from it? Yeah. But it's understandable. Especially consider especially when you consider that it's going to be very, very hard to convince him to fight somebody that's going to challenge him. And I heard this too, Gail. I remember hearing about when they came to the press conference when they announced, because I was watching it too. I know people want Benavidez. I know they want it. But guess what? Benavidez is not going to wait anymore. He's already stated he's staying at he's going to stay at 175 after this fight with Vostok. So either Canelo goes back up to the weight where he suffered his most recent loss against Bivol, or he stays at 168. He gets mentored. He gets Berlanga. He gets Maul. He'll get a Durrell brother and ride into the sunset, because Jaime was probably the most interesting fighter you can see as a challenger right now in that weight class. And he took care of him pretty effectively, even though Jaime did have his moments in that fight. I forget what rounds was, the first or the second. He landed a pretty decent hook that got Canelo's attention. And he tried to go for it. He tried for the gusto. But Canelo, much more economic with his punches, much more accurate, and much more pinpointed. And yeah, after that, beautiful, beautiful, absolutely beautiful uppercut.
Let me repeat what Daniel discussed. We had a news conference for the upcoming doubleheader, if you will, with Gervonta Davis against Frank Martin, and as the co-main, David Benavidez in his first official fight at light heavyweight against former world champion Alexander Vostok. Benavidez made it very clear he is moving to light heavyweight. When pressed over and over by questions, he said he was done with super middleweight. He would consider moving down only for a Canelo Alvarez fight. But Benavidez is doing the smart thing. He is moving on. He is making his own path. I get it. Fans are obsessed with wanting to see this fight. But sometimes the career paths do not align. They do not cross. And Alvarez, yes, learned plenty of lessons from Floyd Mayweather. He has got maybe 4 or 5 fights tops left. Him moving up to light heavyweight against somebody like Sergey Kovalev, who's never a very big light heavyweight, or Dmitry Bivol, also never a very big light heavyweight. Unfortunately, he miscalculated his skill level. And he's not going to do that again against a guy who is a very big super middleweight, who is much more of a power puncher than either Alvarez, either Kovalev or Bivol. So he doesn't intend to go out on a shield at the end of his career. He wants to go out on a win. He wants to go out clean from here. And I object to the word I'm looking at on the screen right now, original, scared. He's not scared. I think that is an insult to call fighters scared when they're willing to get into the ring. Canelo got cracked several times by Munguia. Canelo's chin is very underrated. He took those shots extremely well. And Munguia did some nice body work as well. He, through the first, I think, 8 or 9 rounds, had landed actually the equal number of body shots that Alvarez did. But he's saying, no, I have a long-term legacy. I have years and decades out of the ring to think about after I'm done. He doesn't need Benavidez to secure his legacy. I think fans have a very hard time grasping that. They think that a fighter should just throw himself into the path of an oncoming truck. Unless the money is huge, which for certain opponents from the big stars it is, why would they do that? Seriously, why would they do that? He doesn't need to.
Oh, and I'll say this. We'll jump into this because there's a reason why they're not going to do this, and it's not financial. We know more health wise than we did in the days where we saw these fights go back and forth coming into it, even though we want to. Folks, should we look at how the 90s heavyweights are looking now compared to in their primes? Yeah, they're older, but just look at the way they act. Just look at the way they think. Their mannerisms. Like, a lot of them went against each other. And when they're in their primes, the way we want them to, and it cost them a lot. Fighters today are not going to want to take that same level of risk because they know the things about mental decline, and they know, unfortunately, about the monster that is CTE. Something we have to remember, that we cannot diagnose until somebody dies at this current
Excellent
stage.
Yeah,
Excellent point.
that's absolutely an excellent point. There's no reason for him to put himself in that position. He has children, he has a family, and they make no mistake. I think there is more than a small possibility that Canelo decides he's going to try his hand at professional golf, especially if there is money from the Saudi-backed Live Golf Tour to put him on the circuit. Oh, he'd do that in a heartbeat. He is very serious about his golf game, and he is not half bad for a guy who really approaches it more like a serious hobby than an actual job.
Indeed. And go ahead, Daniel. Final word before we move on to
final word. And we have to remember, folks, this has happened throughout history all the time. We never saw Sugar Ray Leonard against Aaron Pryor for various reasons. We never saw Riddick Bowe versus Lennox Lewis for various reasons. Sometimes it doesn't happen. You can say awesome things that are scared, but sometimes there, a lot of things that we want to line up don't line up exactly the way you want it. Hell, right now we can talk about the fact that we're never going to get Joshua Wilder. Even at this late stage of their lives, it just doesn't happen sometimes, even though we've wanted to have it for a long time.
Absolutely. I see the comments are popping off. I'm trying to put as many on the screen for those for folks to react to. So let's listen. Let's move on to some news. We're going to split these things up because, like I said, going to try to get this thing done quickly because we're kind of running on fumes here. So I'm going to split this up. I'm going back to you, Daniel. Following the real Big Baby Miller, Jared Anderson, for those who don't know, his win over the cruiserweight, and a lot of criticism when it came to that fight. There have been folks in the boxing community wanting to see Jared Anderson test himself. It looked like there's a chance we may get it. Negotiations apparently happening between Big Baby and Wilder, especially if Wilder overcomes his June 1st battle against Zhili Zhang. Your thoughts on the possibility of Big Baby Anderson fighting the Bomb Squad?
Noticing who he's negotiating with. He is negotiating with the Blood Money Mark. I will never call that man His Excellency. He is the Blood Money Mark to me. But Mark, and like I said, there's a reason the money mark brings the money. But what's interesting to me is that, remember, the 5 card, most of the big super cards that we've seen, there hasn't been a lot of top rank participation in these cards, in these Saudi cards. They're big outside of Fury. And considering how Jared Anderson what has been behaving in this certain legal troubles that he's been into recently, and obviously his other comments saying that he didn't think he was gonna stick around boxing for a long time either. It may sound mean or it may sound controversial, but maybe Bob is just, he's looking to cash him out now. Maybe he thinks Wilder will land a miracle shot against Zhang, knock Zhang out, and then maybe Wilder takes care of his Jared Anderson problem, and you may not have to deal with him, even though in that case, then we really have to start looking to see who's going to be the better prospect right now at heavyweight, because as much as I like Richard Torres, size-wise, it's not going to be it.
They should put him down to cruiserweight, Richard Torres.
He can easily make it, yeah.
Indeed. More news to talk about. Gail, let me put this comment up from, who was this? Ivan. Unfortunately, many fights never happened. Bo versus Lewis, Chavez versus Azuma Nelson, Foreman versus Tyson, Mars versus Donaire, Mikey Garcia, Lomachenko, Adonis Stevenson, and Kovalev. I agree with that 100%. More news. I saw this comment on social media, so I'm not going to take credit for it. One thing's for certain, two things for sure, and that is whenever there's talk about Beterbiev in a potential big fight, he always finds a way to get injured, and that's the case here when it comes to Beterbiev, as news broke last week that an escalator accident, meniscus damage, and now his highly anticipated fight against Bivol has been pushed back. Huh?
No. That was a sarcastic remark someone made that took off. Beterbiev tore, not damaged, tore his meniscus in training. That is soft tissue in the knee. It will require surgery. This is not a rehab. This is a surgical repair that will be necessary. Forget the elevator nonsense. Come on, people. It's social media. Give me a break. And so the fight with Bivol is postponed on Beterbiev's side. Now, to our surprise, since most of the media, boxing media, was in Las Vegas this weekend when this suddenly popped up in the middle of us covering a big fight card, plus previewing the announcement for June 15th, suddenly it was, oh, and by the way, there's another big story. Okay, great. So it flew a little bit under the radar. What we have learned since then was that we were told that there would be an attempt to find another opponent for Bivol, which kind of surprised me. I thought, really? We're not gonna just hang in there, keep Bivol handy before we reschedule this fight? Kind of surprised me. But no, apparently the Saudis have found another opponent. He is going to be he's a virtually unknown opponent. And I got to pull up his name. He is from Libya, of all people, Malik Zinad. He is, in theory, ranked number 2 at light heavyweight by the IBF. He is 22-0 with 16 knockouts. But you can imagine that his opposition to date for those 22 fights is, pretty darn limited, right?
It seems like I've seen him before somewhere. I just can't remember offhand.
He has, in fact, fought on cards in Europe. He has fought on a card in the UK, a couple of them, actually. So he's probably been on some deep undercards. And he did in his last fight in April, he fought in Sydney, Australia. And that was the IBF Eliminator. So that was on a card that probably only hit your radar screen if you're a real hardcore boxing head, because the biggest name on the card was Tim Tszju's younger brother, Nikita. Otherwise, it was very much a regional card. Malik Zinad's opponents have records like 27-8, 22-10, 12-16. You get the picture. Okay.
Yeah.
And he has only fought one 12-round fight. in his entire career. And interestingly enough, he only got a majority decision. Still, that keeps Bivol active. It keeps him on the card. Despite what the box rec numbers look like, yeah, it's not exactly a big threat. So Bivol will do what Bivol does best. He will box, he will stay active, and he will mark time until we see what happens to Beterbiev. I am very concerned about this. Beterbiev is closing in on 40 years old and has a ruptured meniscus in his knee. He's already had knee problems. This is not good news. We're talking about, oh, sure, this is going to be rescheduled later this year. Fans, I say just brace yourself. Just brace
He's 40 years
yourself.
old with a torn meniscus. He's not going to be fighting until 2025.
If he ever does. If he ever does. Let's make that loud and clear. How much permanent damage is being done to him at this point at age 40? Will he be willing to return with even a slightly compromised knee compared to prior to the accident? I think that this news is being slow rolled, honestly, and I hate to be Miss Debbie Downer here, but Bivol could box rings around Beterbiev if he's not mobile, if he's less mobile even than he has been. So we'll see what happens. But in any event, Bivol will still be on the card. However, it will no longer be the main event in that card.
Quick question before we go to another story. Should we really talk about Ryan Garcia's PED test, or has enough been said in these boxing streets?
There are so many rumors. There's so much disinformation. Let's see what VADA returns for the secondary sample. I will say this. His confirmed dirty test is for a supplement that has more plausible deniability about contamination. It's in the scheme of things, while it's a banned substance, it's not as serious as if he was taking, heavy duty steroids. But the second dirty test for an androgen steroid derivative, if that comes back confirmed, his explanation about, I had a contaminated supplement is not going to pass the smell test. So it's going to be a very different story depending on what comes back on that second B sample with the steroid. Whether it is a slap on the wrist, sort of, you need to check your supplements and don't let people hand stuff over to you that hasn't been tested, versus you got a much more serious issue. I will say that the Garcia camp claims they're going to do their own investigation and testing and try to figure out what the origin of all this was. And that's what they need to do. But boy, what a mess. What a mess.
Well, it's his own doing, right? You can't be irresponsible and as reckless as he was leading up to the fight against Haney, admitting to drinking, and even afterwards. We see he has a bunch of hangers on in his camp right now. He doesn't know what's fully going on with him and what people could in terms of what he's taking supplement wise. So the lack of keeping the ship tight in terms of who is and who's in and around him. He says he didn't do anything wrong. However, because things are so loose in his camp, he could have had someone could have given him something that was not up to snuff, and then he just didn't know about it. So I'll just leave it at that. You was going to say something, Daniel?
The only thing I was mainly going to add when they came to this, because again, we have to wait for the second test to be in. The only question you need to have when it comes to VADA is, Was that the only test that he failed? Because it's not a situation where VADA's only going to test on the day before the fight. They test you throughout, which does give Ryan Garcia a little bit of wiggle room, because if none of the prior tests popped, but this one did, it's still him being sloppy. Where it's more plausible than he actually got off a program and he didn't know when to cycle off, and the normal lingo when somebody's taking steroids.
And to answer that, Daniel, yes, according to VADA and according to Garcia, he was, pardon me, tested up to and including through mid-April, and tested multiple times and never had a dirty test.
So we'll keep you updated on the situation, and we'll wait for that B sample again. For those who do not know, unless you've been sleeping under a rock, Ryan Garcia, in the post-fight drug test, tested positive for PEDs. Let's move on. Breaking news here, and I'll go right back to you, Gail, regarding kind of tying Canelo and Bud in our other earlier discussion regarding Inoue and what's been talked about during the show. Possible fight between the two, or at least it's been discussed, happening in Saudi Arabia later on this year in December. What's the details?
Well, let's not say possible fight. Let's say there is discussion about making a fight. And given the source of the information, it becomes much more intriguing. In an interview that Turki al-Sheikh, the architect of a lot of these big Saudi financed cards, did with ESPN, he talked in more general terms that he wants to fix boxing because it's broken. It's a very interesting way to put it. And one of the things he talked about was planning out the next 6 months after they finish their fight card in August in Los Angeles, planning the next portion of their season, as he's calling it. And that one of the fights he's very interested in trying to put together is a fight between Terence Crawford, assuming he wins his defense against Israel Madrimov at 154 pounds, and Canelo Alvarez. It's a fight that has been on the radar, has been discussed. The only way it would possibly happen is that kind of money. It's intriguing to think about, but can he deliver Canelo for Crawford? Hard to say.
Yeah, but the thing is, when he speaks and he wants something, he's been getting it lately. It'll be interesting, the timeline, given that Canelo is probably going to return to the ring in September. Bud is going to fight in July.
Right.
These are older fighters we're
Bud
talking
is
about
going
here.
to fight in August.
August, excuse me, you're right. August.
So
Early
you have Canelo, who's
August.
just fought, Bud going to fight on August 3rd.
Right.
Canelo going to fight essentially the second weekend in September. And mark my words, it will be Canelo versus Edgar Berlanga. And for those that hate the fight, who else is left at 168? He's run through everybody else. The only other viable fighters are David Benavidez.
There you go.
He has a fight June 15th. Would he be available? Don't know. And he has said, I am at light heavyweight. Let's take him at his word, everybody. So who else is left? The only other fighter out there floating around that has some intrigue for me is Christian Mbili. But
no, I'll put Morrell above Mbili.
Morrell, that's not going to happen. And neither one of those fighters is enough of a draw. Audience draw matters. Why do you think Ryan Garcia keeps getting big fights? Because he brings big audiences. How big do you think the audience is going to be for Morrell? How big do you think the audience will be for a fighter out of Africa who fights in Canada? Yeah, okay. Let's make it clear this weekend the fight, despite the excitement, despite the liveliness of the crowd at the T-Mobile Arena, was not a sellout, was not even close to a sellout. Yeah, I heard some PBC folks and announcers and narrators saying it was a sellout. It was not a sellout. It was just shy of 15,000 people in an arena that seats 23,000. In nobody's universe is that a sellout. Now, I think that's a shame because Canelo Alvarez is one of the generational talents in boxing. Love him, hate him, love how he's handled his career, don't, not particularly a fan. He's still one of the biggest names and biggest faces in the sport. Why was that arena not filled? He's had trouble getting a draw across from him in the kind of fight he wants. In this case, it was almost a gift to Munguia and a gift to the fans in Mexico. But the audience in the United States was still a bit limited. And that's the problem he has with these other two fighters. So, does the Crawford fight intrigue him? If the paycheck is right, maybe, but it won't happen before sometime next year. And some of the sanctioning bodies may have something to say about it, wanting Crawford to make some title fights at 154 before he goes after Canelo. Stay tuned.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. Let's move on to um preview some fights here. We're going to go through these one on one because there's only two fights I want to focus on. I go to you, Daniel. Intriguing, far as I'm concerned, women's fight happening over in England as Jessica McCaskill putting up her welterweight belt against Lauren Price. The thing is, what I've been reading about this, both over in the UK and here in the States, when people talk about this fight, they're making the champ a pretty, not a sizable underdog, but a lot of people are believe that Price, Olympic medalist, they believe that Price is the favorite here with McCaskill um, coming off what I felt was a loss to Sandy Ryan. The fight was technically a draw. The challenger here has all the momentum. I believe that Price is the better boxer. McCaskill's getting up there in age. Yeah, it's understandable why the talk here in this fight is heavily on the side of the challenger, Lauren Price.
Yeah, this is a situation, unfortunately, where, and it's actually a very, very good example of what we were talking about again when it came to Canelo not wanting to see the tail end of his career or be a battered old champion who is in many ways a shadow of their former selves. And as much as I don't like saying it, McCaskill's unfortunately at that stage. She can, like say, she still has great skills. She still has power. She still has the accolade of being the person that knocked off Cecilia Brancas. But Father Time is undefeated. You already got a little bit of a gift with that last decision.
A little
So
bit.
I'm being kind here. I am being kind here. But that's the main thing. Everybody sees that unless she has, I'll say it like this. Unless McCaskill has a similar to performance to what Eric Morales had against Marcos Maidana, in a loss, mind you, unless she has that type of performance, it's fair to count her out, unfortunately, at this point of her career. And it's not insulting to say it. Unfortunately, you eat, and especially in combat sports, the route has always been that you tend to be staying longer than what you need to be. And that catches up with you, and it looks like it's going to catch up with McCaskill. Maybe she could pull a rabbit out of the hat with this fight, but considering what we saw in the last outing, I don't think she can.
Also, that fight is going to happen um, this coming Saturday, March 11th, in Cardiff, Wales, on Peacock. Put that out there on Peacock. For those who get Peacock, you will be able to see that fight. Also on that same day, well, technically the 11th here in the States where we are recording, but it's actually May 12th over in Australia. Fight between Lomachenko, Kambosos, vacant IBF title lightweight, right, Gail? On balance, everything says that Lomachenko is the favorite and prohibitive favorite, but I'm not liking some of the clips I'm hearing in interviews from Lomachenko. Him saying he doesn't have many fights left. He talks about how it takes him longer to recover from fights. He's fighting on the road. Say what you want about Kambosos and how people think he's been eating a long time off of that win over Teofimo Lopez a few years back. That still, he will have the hometown crowd. You never know when it comes to the scoring. I make Lomachenko the favorite. I believe he will win. I think if he still has something left, he should easily outbox Kambosos, but you never know. And in terms of what Lomachenko was talking about in terms of his physical state, there's still that lingering question there.
Well, Kambosos was like a shooting star. You know, when he defeated Teofimo Lopez, I mean, it was a thunderclap, and it was a huge, huge accomplishment in general for Australian boxing. You know, and Kambosos really preceded the ascendance of Tim Tszyu. And so there's been this interesting, build of interest in Australian boxing like we haven't seen in many, many years. But since Kambosos rose to such prominence with his upset win, we've seen the Maloney brothers, despite the loss this morning in Japan by Jason. You had the Maloney brothers. You've seen Tszyu, both Tim and now his younger brother, ascending, and cruiserweight Jayo Pataya, who is a phenomenal talent.
So I like him as a fighter.
I love him.
His style and his attitude. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, love it. Can't wait to see him go back after Marius Freitas. Anyway, that's a sidebar conversation for another day. So the days where the big stars of Australian boxing were Jeff Horn and Daniel Geale, things have changed a lot. But Kambosos' place in that universe has shifted quite a bit, because it seemed like his win was a bit of a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
He gives a good effort. He sells a fight. He's a terrific personality to cover. Boxing media loves him. But it turns out his timing for that win was just, perfection for him. He does seem like he may have been a flash in the pan. So he always gives a good effort. His fights are fun to watch. But against somebody who's not going to bang with him, who's not going to brawl with him, he needs that to work with. And Lomachenko will not give that to him. Now, it's smart for Loma to sort of lower expectations a little bit. He knows what people say about him. He's been around the block, believe me, more than virtually any fighter who's out there now. People lose track of his long, long amateur career, which means he's been all over the world. He's fought all over the world. He's seen every style imaginable. And he knows his career is coming to an end. Give him credit for taking the fight, for being willing to fight there. Not on home turf, but does he really have any home turf given the status of what's going on in his country? He's probably as much at home in the United States as anywhere at this point. And very much like Canelo at the end of his career, pardon me, very much like our veteran super flyweight fighters, Estrada, Chocolatito. We could go down the list of a lot of fighters who are starting to come to the end of their career, who've given us some marvelous fights, amazing performances in entertainment, win or lose. We need to appreciate them while they are here. And so I'm here to make that case for Lomachenko, who's still out there, who could have retired long ago, who is a first ballot Hall of Famer no matter what happens this weekend. But I do think he has every potential of making this a tactical fight, handcuffing Kambosos and winning the fight, which would be a good solid win for him after some very close performances over the last few months and years.
And I think we're going to end things on that note. I want to thank everybody who joined us in the live chat. A pretty lively discussion back and forth in the live chat. I want to thank Lobster, Ivan, who else? TMG, Original Bad. Scrolling up right quick. Beagle, of course, a regular listener on the live show, and it's especially a regular participant in the live chat. I want to thank you all for your comments. Sorry we were not here last week, but I was determined to get this show tonight. Compliance as well. I want to not omit him as well. Again, we were on fumes this evening. Y'all help perk me up and everybody else here on the panel. If you have not done so, please make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and make sure you hit that subscribe button to the bell. That way you'll get any and all notifications on Pound for Pound Box Report. I'm going to go around the panel here. Begin with ladies first. In the show with ladies first, Gail from NY Fights. For those who want to talk all things boxing, let the folks know where they can find you.
Unlike anything you may have heard out there, I am at nyfights.com, nyfights.com for our coverage. Yes, the website's still up, operating as it has. There have been some personnel changes, but they do not include me, and we are still out there covering.
And I'll go to you, Daniel, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk pro wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat, or for those who want to check out the latest when it comes to the beef between Kendrick Lamar and Drake. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes, folks, it's going to be the same handle no matter where you go. Twitter, Mastodon, Blue Sky. I'm even forgetting Threads, maybe. I even forgot. Rocks99.
Mastodon's still out there. Blue Sky's still out there.
It's still out there. It's still out there. Still invitation only, I think, but still out there. Rocks99, RAWKZ99, definitely catch on there. Like I said, it was a very packed weekend when they came to boxing. And hopefully we get more cracking within the year. And maybe we'll get a lot more super fights than we believe we're going to get.
Absolutely. Now, see your message, sleep, Beagle, and trust us. Once we get off here, we're all going to get some sleep. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, you know what it is with me on Twitter, because I refuse to call it X, Brother JR, at Brother JR76. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, fragrance on IG and TikTok, and check out my regular scent of the day. You can do so on TikTok and IG, Brother JRSC. On the next episode, we will do a recap of the fight between Lomachenko and Kambosos, the fight between McCaskill and Lauren Price. We'll probably do some fights on the talk about the undercard of that as well, because again, we was really trying to get in within a finite amount of time. So Carlos Cuadras, he's fighting Andrew Maloney on the undercard of Loma and Kambosos. Nina Hughes going to defend her WBA bantamweight title, so we may touch into that as well, and a preview of the fight that Daniel claims is not going to happen. You got a little bit under 2 weeks to go, Daniel, as we will do a preview of the highly anticipated bout for undisputed status heavyweight between Usyk and Fury on May 18th in Saudi Arabia. On that card, the aforementioned guy, Obatai, is going to fight the rematch against Maurice Bradis for the vacant IBF cruiserweight title. Jorge Cordina is defending his IBF junior lightweight title on that card as well. And the return of Emmanuel Navarrete. He's going to fight Denis Baranchik for the vacant WBO lightweight title. So that was on the docket on the next episode. Again, I want to thank everybody who checked us out, their comments and their questions in what was a lively live chat. This has been episode 444 of Pound for Pound Box Report. For Gail of NYFights.com, for Daniel of 4 Boxing News Indian Scriber, I am your host, Michael. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.